If you want a woman to worry about losing you, stop being always available. Elevate your life, stay calm, and embrace mystery. Don't over-explain or chase her validation. Let her feel your absence and see your value. When you shift focus inward, she starts questioning her place in your world. When you're always emotionally available to a woman, constantly responding, always checking in, giving her every emotional detail of your day, you create a pattern, a rhythm, one she begins to expect. But expectations, when too easily met, breed complacency, and complacency is the death of attraction. There's nothing wrong with being emotionally connected, but when your emotional availability becomes predictable and constant, it loses its weight. It becomes background noise. Comforting, yes, but not exciting, not something that provokes emotion. And a woman who isn't emotionally stirred is a woman who stops paying attention. Withdrawing your emotional availability doesn't mean ghosting her. It's not about playing games or manipulating feelings. It's about recalibrating the energy. It's about recognizing when you're over-investing and choosing to pull some of that energy back into yourself. When you do this, it shifts the dynamic. She starts to feel the gap. The warmth she took for granted begins to cool, and now she's asking questions. What's changed? Why is he so quiet? Is he okay? And that's where worry is born, not the unhealthy kind, but the kind that makes her realize you're not emotionally dependent on her presence. This subtle withdrawal makes your energy valuable again. You're no longer spilling your emotions across the floor for her to step over casually. You're choosing what to share and when. You're not texting good morning and good night every single day. You're not rushing to solve every emotional hiccup she has. Instead, you're giving her space to miss you, to wonder, to reflect. When you detach slightly from emotional conversations and stop offering endless reassurance, she starts leaning in. She tries to reconnect. She probes. That's the shift. And it only happens when you create a void where certainty used to be. Women respond to emotional presence, but they also react to emotional distance. That contrast is what creates emotional tension, the good kind. When you were emotionally available 24/7, she knew where you stood. She could lean back and relax because your emotional support was guaranteed. But when you stop handing out emotional comfort like candy, she has to start thinking. She starts looking for clues. She tunes in. Suddenly, your silence says more than your words ever did. There's something powerful about a man who doesn't need to explain his every emotion, who doesn't react every time she pulls away, who can be present yet reserved, attentive but not needy. You begin to exude a different kind of confidence, one that says, I'm emotionally grounded, with or without you. That energy makes her pause, because now she has something to lose. And make no mistake, emotional withdrawal isn't about punishment. It's about balance. If you're always pouring and she's only sipping, you'll eventually feel drained. But when you pull back, she's forced to step forward. She may not say it outright, but she'll feel it. That subtle worry, that internal question, am I losing him, is a powerful motivator. It activates emotional awareness. It brings focus back to the connection she may have started overlooking. You don't have to announce this shift. In fact, the quietness is the point. Let her notice. Let her experience the change without you explaining it. She'll feel it in your slower replies, in the space between your calls, in your decision to focus more on yourself, your goals, your peace, your boundaries. When your emotional energy is no longer centered around her, she starts to realize that her presence in your life is a privilege, not a given. That's when the dynamic changes. That's when you stop being predictable. That's when you become a little less emotionally available, but a lot more emotionally valuable. Becoming mysterious again isn't about pretending to be someone you're not. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself that you gave away too easily. When you first meet a woman, there's always an air of mystery. You don't reveal everything. You're selective with your words. Your actions feel deliberate, and your energy is unpredictable. That mystery makes her curious. It pulls her in. She wonders what you're thinking, what you're doing, and what makes you tick. But over time, most men let that mystery slip away. In an attempt to bond, to build trust, they start sharing everything, every thought, every plan, every emotion, and what once felt intriguing starts to feel routine. Mystery is not about silence, it's about restraint. It's the choice to not always give full access to your thoughts and emotions. It's allowing her to wonder where your mind is, to feel like she doesn't completely have you figured out. And that wondering, those unanswered questions, are what make her pay closer attention. She listens more carefully, observes more intently, and starts to value every interaction because nothing feels guaranteed. Women are naturally intuitive. They pick up on your energy, your patterns, your routines. Once they feel they know you inside and out, the urgency to understand you fades. But when you bring back that layer of unpredictability, when you become more selective with your words and less reactive to hers, she feels that shift. She can't read you as easily, and that in itself becomes powerful, because now she's investing emotionally to decode you again. She's leaning in, wondering if she missed something. That's where her focus returns, not because you demanded it, but because your energy compelled it. A mysterious man doesn't need to boast or prove anything. He speaks with purpose. He shares just enough to keep the conversation flowing, but holds back enough to keep her guessing. He doesn't post everything on social media. He doesn't overshare every detail of his day. And he certainly doesn't explain every emotion he feels. This doesn't make him distant. It makes him intriguing. He becomes the puzzle she wants to solve again. When you become mysterious, you also create space for her to chase, and that's essential. Too often, men take on all the emotional labor, checking in, validating, reassuring. In doing so, they rob her of the natural tension that draws her in. Let her initiate sometimes. Let her wonder what you're thinking. Let her reach out first. That space you create by being less predictable forces her to participate emotionally. She's not just sitting back, she's engaged. And here's the truth. Mystery isn't always about what you do. Sometimes it's about what you don't do. You don't always respond immediately. You don't always share your weekend plans. You don't always react when she pulls away. That stillness, that calm, that unbothered demeanor, it's unnerving in the best way. It shows her you're not grasping, not chasing, not dependent on her attention. And that emotional independence makes her feel something, because now she has to question what used to feel certain. Mystery creates emotional depth. It invites curiosity, and curiosity sustains attraction. A woman doesn't want a man she can fully predict. She wants to feel him, to sense him, to slowly uncover him over time. When you bring back that energy, the unpredictability, the calm control, the emotional restraint, you shift the power dynamic. You're not giving everything away at once. You're letting her experience you in layers. The beauty of mystery is that it makes her look at you differently. She'll replay conversations, read between the lines, notice the pauses in your words, and start to invest mentally in understanding you again. That's when the game changes. She begins to crave the emotional chase. She becomes more attentive. She starts to worry, not because you manipulated her, but because you reintroduce the value of not being completely known. Mystery isn't about being cold. It's about being intentional. It's about showing that your emotional world is deep, but not always open for public access. When you bring back that sense of enigma, she doesn't just look at you, she studies you. And in that study, her emotional attachment grows, because what's hard to fully grasp is often the most desired. Elevating your personal value is one of the most powerful ways to shift how a woman perceives you, and more importantly, how she feels about you. It's not about trying to impress her or proving your worth. It's about genuinely becoming a version of yourself that commands respect, admiration, and emotional investment. When you start to grow, evolve, and prioritize yourself, everything about you begins to feel more magnetic. You move differently. You speak with more confidence. And without saying a word, she senses that you're becoming someone she can't afford to overlook. Value starts from within. It's not just about money, status, or appearance, although those things do play a role. It's about how you carry yourself. It's about your mindset, your goals, your energy. When you're clear on who you are and what you want, you automatically stand out. You become more selective. You're not desperate for attention, and you're certainly not chasing validation. That kind of self-assurance is rare, and rare things are always valued more. When a woman sees that you're investing in yourself, your health, your career, your passions, it triggers something inside her. It signals that you have options, that you're not sitting around waiting for her to complete you. You're already complete. You're simply choosing who gets access to that version of you. And that choice is everything. When a woman senses that you're becoming the best version of yourself, it naturally creates a sense of urgency. She starts to worry, not in a panicked way, but in a subtle, internal way. She wonders if she still holds the same space in your life. She questions if you're slipping out of her emotional grip. Men who elevate themselves stop settling. They stop engaging in low-value behaviors like over-explaining, over-texting, and overcompensating. Instead, they let their actions speak. Their focus shifts from seeking attention to creating impact. They show up with purpose, not pressure. That shift in energy is what draws a woman in. She sees the discipline, the consistency, the quiet confidence, and she feels it. She sees that you're not just talking about growth, you're living it. And that kind of transformation can't be ignored. When you level up, people treat you differently. And women, in particular, are highly sensitive to change. If you used to be passive and now you're assertive, she'll notice. If you used to be reactive and now you're composed, she'll feel it. If you used to make her the center of your world and now you're building a world she wants to be part of, she'll start to reconsider her position in your life. That's how personal growth creates emotional tension. It reminds her that you're evolving, with or without her. You don't need to announce your growth. Just embody it. Go to the gym not to get her attention, but to respect your body. Pursue your goals not to prove a point, but because you have a vision for your life. Educate yourself. Upgrade your mindset. Improve your style. Build emotional intelligence. Not for validation, but because you refuse to stay stagnant. That level of ambition is undeniably attractive. It makes her look at you with new eyes. She starts to wonder what else is different. She starts to think about what she might be missing. And here's the key. When your value increases, your standards do too. You stop tolerating inconsistency, disrespect, or games. You become more intentional with your energy. You don't chase. You don't beg. You simply walk in your worth. And that unspoken power is what makes her take you seriously. It's what makes her question whether she's doing enough to keep your attention. That's the kind of worry that makes a woman step up. It's not about fear. It's about realization. The realization that you're not the same man she once knew. And if she wants to stay close to you, she needs to match the energy. Elevating your personal value isn't a strategy, it's a lifestyle. It's a long-term commitment to becoming better every day. And when you live like that, you don't have to chase anything. You attract everything, including the attention, the respect, and yes, even the worry, from the woman who once thought she had you all figured out. Seeking a woman's approval is one of the fastest ways to lose her respect and attraction. When you're constantly trying to impress her, gain her validation, or get her to like you, you unknowingly place her on a pedestal. And the moment she feels that, the dynamic shifts. She's no longer seeing you as an equal, but as someone who's chasing her, someone who needs her attention to feel valuable. And nothing kills attraction faster than the energy of neediness. Women are intuitive. They can feel when your actions are driven by the desire to be liked. Whether it's the way you agree with everything she says, avoid confrontation, or overly accommodate her preferences, she sees through it. And while she might not call it out directly, her behavior will start to change. She'll test your boundaries more, take you less seriously, and slowly pull away. Not because she's cruel, but because she no longer feels that challenge, that respect, or that emotional tension that keeps her engaged. When you stop seeking her approval, you reclaim your power. You shift the focus from pleasing her to honoring yourself. You're no longer trying to say the right thing just to avoid upsetting her. You're not bending your values to fit into her expectations. You're not molding yourself into a version you think she'll like. Instead, you're showing up as your authentic self, unfiltered, confident, and grounded. And that kind of self-assured energy is what actually earns her admiration. A man who doesn't seek approval is a man who can walk away, not because he's cold or detached, but because he knows his worth. He understands that his value doesn't come from how she reacts to him, but from how he shows up in his own life. And that unshakable confidence creates a shift in her mindset. She starts to wonder, why isn't he trying to impress me? That curiosity, that inner questioning, is exactly what makes her invest more emotionally. You don't have to be rude or arrogant to stop seeking approval. You simply need to stop needing her to validate your choices, your opinions, or your presence. Speak your truth, even if it's uncomfortable. Set boundaries, even if it disappoints her. Say no, even when yes feels easier. When you stop fearing her reactions, you start commanding her respect. Because now you're not a man trying to win her over. You're a man living in alignment with his own values. And here's something that often gets overlooked. When a woman realizes you're not seeking her approval, she starts to seek yours. She becomes more thoughtful about her actions. She wants to impress you. She checks herself before she crosses boundaries. Why? Because you've made it clear, even without saying a word, that you're not afraid to walk away from anything that doesn't align with your standards. And that kind of emotional independence is rare. It makes her feel something she didn't expect to feel, uncertainty. And that's what makes her take notice. You teach people how to treat you based on what you tolerate. If you're constantly looking for her praise or trying to prove that you're good enough, you're silently telling her that you don't believe in your own value. But when you carry yourself like someone who doesn't need external validation to feel worthy, you become the kind of man she doesn't want to lose. Stop over-explaining. Stop apologizing for who you are. Stop trying to read her mind or adjust your personality just to keep her happy. Let her see you for who you are, raw, real, and unapologetic. Some women might walk away when you do this, and that's okay. Because the right woman will respect you more for it. She won't be drawn to the man who tries to please her at every turn. She'll be drawn to the man who knows himself, speaks his truth, and refuses to be swayed by temporary emotions. When you stop seeking her approval, you become more attractive, not just to her, but to yourself. You stand taller. You speak with more conviction. You make choices from a place of clarity, not fear. And that's when everything changes. Not because you tried harder, but because you finally stopped trying to be liked and started being respected. When your entire world begins to revolve around one woman, it sends a message, loud and clear. It tells her that she is your main source of fulfillment, entertainment, validation, and purpose. At first, she may enjoy the attention. It may feel flattering, even exciting, but eventually, the energy begins to shift. What once felt like passion starts to feel like pressure, and instead of being drawn closer, she starts to pull away. Why? Because no woman wants to feel like she's your whole world. She wants to feel like she's stepping into a man's life that is already rich, full, and vibrant, without her. Engaging with the world means you've got your own thing going on. You have goals that excite you, hobbies that feed your spirit, friends and a social life that bring you joy. You're not just available, you're occupied in the best way possible. And when a woman sees that, she respects it. She's drawn to it. She wonders how she can fit into that space, not how she can become it. That's the difference. When you make a woman the center of your universe, even if you're doing it out of love, care, or interest, you create an imbalance. She feels the weight of being your everything, and most women aren't looking for that kind of responsibility. They want to be part of your life, not your only reason for living. When you're constantly texting, calling, asking what she's doing, where she's going, what she's thinking, you begin to shrink your world down to her. And that level of emotional intensity can quickly turn into suffocation. But when you engage with the world, your energy expands. You become more interesting. You have things to talk about, ideas to share, and experiences to draw from. You're not leaning on her to entertain you or fill your time. You're already fulfilled. She's not the source of your happiness. She's a complement to it. And that dynamic is powerful. It creates space for her to pursue you, to want to be part of your orbit, because now being with you feels like an opportunity, not an obligation. Start focusing on the areas of your life that bring you purpose. Reconnect with your passions. Pour into your personal growth. Spend time with people who uplift you. Go places. Experience things. Develop a vision for your life that excites you every single day. The more you immerse yourself in the world, the more magnetic you become. Not just to her, but to everyone around you. Your energy shifts from need to presence, from obsession to balance. When she sees you busy building something, creating something, becoming someone, she starts to view you differently. She starts to think about how she fits into your life, not the other way around. And that shift in perspective creates desire, because now your time isn't expected, it's earned. Your attention isn't assumed, it's appreciated. She understands that you're not just waiting around for her to call. You're moving forward, and if she wants to be part of that movement, she has to meet you there. Even in relationships, maintaining a life outside of your partner is essential. It keeps things fresh. It keeps you grounded. It reminds both of you that you are individuals first, partners second. And the healthiest, most attractive relationships are built by two whole people, each living fully, each bringing value, and each choosing to share their life, not surrender it. So don't stop living just because you've met someone who excites you. Don't abandon your goals, your friends, or your routines. Keep growing, keep expanding, keep exploring, because when you engage with the world, you become a man of depth, a man who cannot be easily figured out, a man whose presence is earned, not taken for granted. And that's the man she doesn't just want. It's the man she worries about losing. When a woman is emotional, reactive, or caught up in chaos, most men make one of two mistakes. They either match her energy, getting defensive, angry, or emotionally triggered, or they withdraw completely, leaving her to drown in her own emotional storm. Neither response creates trust or attraction. What a woman truly needs, but will rarely say out loud, is a man who can remain calm when she is not, a man who holds steady when her emotions are spinning. That calmness doesn't make you weak, it makes you powerful. It doesn't make you passive, it makes you grounded. And in a world full of emotional reactivity, a calm man is a rarity, and a mystery she becomes deeply drawn to. Women often process emotions differently. Sometimes they need to release, vent, cry, or even create tension just to feel connected. It's not always rational, and it doesn't have to be. The mistake many men make is trying to control her emotions, fix her mood, or argue her back into logic. But emotions aren't something to be fixed. They're something to be held. And when you can sit in the storm with stillness, you show her that her emotional world doesn't scare you. That's when trust deepens. That's when attraction strengthens. Being calm in her chaos doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect or emotional abuse. It means you know the difference between a woman in distress and a woman crossing your boundaries. You don't shrink, you don't submit, but you don't escalate either. You stay centered. You let her express herself without losing yourself in the process. You're the grounded presence that gives her room to feel without fear of abandonment or judgment. That kind of strength is magnetic. It's the kind of energy that makes her feel safe, even when she's unsure of herself. When you match chaos with chaos, you become part of the problem. But when you respond with calm detachment and quiet authority, you remind her that you are not easily shaken. And women notice that. She notices when you don't flinch under pressure, when you don't raise your voice to prove a point, when you don't get pulled into emotional traps or start reacting like everyone else. She sees that emotional maturity, even if she can't fully articulate it. And that makes her lean in, because you're offering something deeper than attraction. You're offering stability. Think of calmness as leadership, emotional leadership. You're not leading by controlling or dominating. You're leading by example. You're saying, this is how I hold space. This is how I respond. This is how I maintain peace within myself, no matter what's happening outside. That energy does more to stabilize a relationship than any clever argument or passionate apology ever could. You become the anchor, not the wave. And she'll test it, consciously or not. She'll raise her voice, pick a fight, bring emotional heat just to see how you respond. Not because she wants to destroy you, but because she wants to know if you can handle her, if you can hold your ground when things get intense, if you'll still be standing with composure when she's unraveling. That kind of calm isn't found in rehearsed lines or forced silence. It comes from doing the inner work, knowing who you are, mastering your emotions, and refusing to let someone else's storm determine your state of being. And something powerful happens when you consistently show up like this. Her storms get shorter, her emotions become less frantic. She doesn't need to test you as often because she already knows you're not going anywhere and you're not going to lose yourself trying to save her. That makes her feel emotionally secure. And emotional security, for a woman, is one of the deepest foundations of lasting attraction. Being calm in her chaos isn't about being distant. It's about being present without being reactive. It's about offering strength without force. It's about standing firm without needing to dominate. When she sees that her mood doesn't control you, she begins to respect your emotional power. And in that respect, love grows. Not the chaotic kind of love built on drama and reactivity, but the kind that lasts. The kind where she doesn't just love being around you, she finds peace in it. And that peace, more than anything, is what makes her worry about losing you. When you explain your every move to a woman, where you're going, who you're with, what time you'll be back, why you didn't answer immediately, you may think you're being transparent or reassuring, but in reality, you're slowly chipping away at the mystery, strength, and independence that once drew her in. You turn yourself into an open book with no suspense, no tension, no edge. And over time, she stops being intrigued by you. She stops wondering about you. She stops needing to figure you out. And that curiosity, that desire to understand what's going on in your mind, that's what keeps attraction alive. You don't owe anyone a running commentary of your life, and in the early stages of dating or even deep into a relationship, over-explaining can come across as insecurity. It signals that you're afraid she might misinterpret your actions, fear she'll get upset, or worry she'll pull away. But real power lies in silent confidence. When a woman senses that you move through the world without the need to constantly justify yourself, she sees you as a man who leads his life, rather than one who seeks permission to live it. A man who doesn't explain every move isn't being secretive, he's being sovereign. His life has structure, boundaries, and movement that isn't dictated by the need for approval. He may share where he's going or what he's doing, but not from a place of seeking validation. He does it because he wants to share, not because he's afraid not to. And that distinction makes all the difference. When you feel the need to constantly clarify, justify, or defend, you're not operating from a place of power. You're operating from fear. Part of what makes a man attractive is his emotional self-control, his ability to be clear in action without needing to narrate his every thought. Think about the type of man who just gets up and gets things done. He doesn't make announcements. He doesn't need to pre-explain or over-apologize. He trusts himself, and because he trusts himself, others begin to trust him. His silence becomes a statement, not a gap to be filled. He's not being difficult. He's being focused. When you stop explaining every move, you let your presence do the talking. You move with intention. You allow your actions to reveal your priorities, and you send a clear message. I'm not afraid of being misunderstood. That level of self-assurance is magnetic, because now she has to lean in a little. She has to pay closer attention. She has to sit with her own emotions instead of always leaning on your words for comfort. That shift makes her emotionally invested. She starts to think. She starts to feel. She starts to worry, not because you're manipulating her, but because you've pulled back just enough to let her come forward. You don't have to be rude or cold. You can be kind, warm, and grounded, and still maintain your boundaries around over-explaining. If she asks where you're going, you can answer, but you don't need to give her a play-by-play of your day, every phone call, every errand, or every conversation you had. Not because you're hiding anything, but because you've learned that oversharing invites overanalysis, and in relationships, too much analysis kills emotional flow. You become more respected when you keep parts of yourself reserved. She begins to understand that you are not for public consumption, that you choose what to reveal and what to keep, that your world doesn't revolve around her approval, and that realization makes her pause. It makes her appreciate the moments when you do open up, because now your words have weight, your transparency has meaning, your attention feels earned. Let her sit with some unanswered questions. Let her experience what it feels like not to have constant access to your mind. Let her wonder, not out of cruelty, but out of intention. That gap between what she knows and what she wants to know is where desire lives. It's where emotional energy starts to build. Because when you give too much too soon, you take away the very thing that draws her to you, curiosity. So the next time you feel the urge to explain yourself, pause. Ask yourself if it's coming from confidence or from fear. If it's fear, choose silence. Let your actions speak. Let her feel your presence without always having to be reassured by your words. That calm restraint, that quiet certainty, it will do more to deepen her attraction than any explanation ever could. Letting her feel the gap is one of the most powerful things you can do when you want to shift the emotional dynamic between you and a woman. It's the intentional space you create, not through silence alone, but through presence that is no longer constantly directed at her. It's when you stop filling every moment with attention, messages, check-ins, and validation. It's when you stop giving the comfort of your constant availability. And that space you create, that's where she begins to feel your absence. And in that absence, she starts to question everything she took for granted. In the beginning, it's common to be eager. You want to show her you're interested. You respond quickly, plan consistently, check in often. But too much of that, without her earning it, makes your presence predictable. Predictability kills mystery, and mystery is what fuels emotional desire. The gap you create isn't about ignoring her. It's about pulling back just enough to give her room to miss you, to feel the difference between your presence and your absence, to realize what it feels like when your energy is no longer wrapped around her. When a woman starts to feel the gap, she begins to reflect. She replays your conversations. She notices the shift. She wonders what changed. This is where her emotional investment starts to deepen, not because you're manipulating her, but because you're no longer feeding her certainty. And emotional certainty, when given too freely, leads to emotional laziness. She stops showing up with the same effort. She stops valuing what used to feel rare. But when you remove the constant reassurance, the energy recalibrates. Most men are terrified to create space. They fear she'll lose interest or move on. But a woman doesn't lose interest in a man who stands in his own power. She loses interest in a man who doesn't believe he's worth being missed. The gap you create tells her that you don't need her to fill every moment of your time. It tells her that you're comfortable with distance because you're fulfilled within yourself. And that, more than anything, makes her wonder. Letting her feel the gap isn't about playing games. It's about giving her the opportunity to show up for you, to check in, to ask questions, to initiate. If you're always the one reaching out, always the one pursuing, always the one keeping the connection alive, she doesn't have to do anything. But when you step back, she's faced with a choice. Either close the gap herself or let the silence grow. And if she chooses to close it, she's investing emotionally. She's stepping into the effort. She's worrying about losing what she thought would always be there. Women are emotional beings. They feel absence deeply, but only when presence had value. That's why the gap works best when it follows a time of meaningful connection, when she's had a taste of your energy, your attention, your presence, and then suddenly there's space. Not punishment, not coldness, but a noticeable shift. That's when her mind starts working. That's when her feelings catch up to the reality she may have been ignoring. This is also where your confidence matters. You have to be okay with letting the space exist. You can't rush to fill it because it feels uncomfortable. You can't check in just because the silence feels unfamiliar. The point of the gap is to give her the opportunity to feel your absence and choose your presence. And that choice is everything. When she chooses you, not out of obligation, but out of desire, that's when the dynamic changes. That's when she begins to realize she can't take you for granted. Letting her feel the gap teaches her something no words ever could, that your attention is earned, not assumed, that your energy is valuable, not disposable, that your presence is a gift, not a given. And when she starts to feel that emotionally, not just intellectually, she becomes more thoughtful, more engaged, more present. So don't be afraid to pull back. Don't fear the silence. Let her feel it. Let her miss your voice, your energy, your calmness. Let her wonder where you went and why the energy shifted. That emotional curiosity will do more to draw her back in than any message, call, or explanation ever could. The gap isn't a threat, it's a mirror. It reflects her true feelings. And if she feels something in that space, you've already done more than enough. ChatGPT said, when you master the art of creating emotional impact without chasing validation, you shift the dynamic entirely. Women are not drawn to men who over-explain, overgive, or overcommit from a place of insecurity. They're drawn to men who are grounded, emotionally composed, mysterious, and fulfilled from within. When you pull back your emotional availability, reclaim your mystery, elevate your personal value, and stop seeking her approval, you create space for her to lean in. By engaging fully with your own life, staying calm in emotional storms, and letting her feel the gap between your presence and absence, you become unforgettable. Not because you begged for attention, but because you embodied strength, balance, and self-respect. That's the version of you she thinks about. That's the man she starts to worry about losing.